Federal investigators are looking at new clues about the final moments of the helicopter flight that ended in tragedy for 9 people, including Kobe Bryant. Newly surfaced video taken not long before the crash appears to show the aircraft in mid-flight before it ran into very serious trouble. Our transportation correspondent, that's Chris Van Cleve, is in Calabasas, California. Chris, it's so hard to look at this video. What are investigators learning?
Well, Gail, good morning. The real hard work of this investigation really just beginning. We do know the helicopter did not have a terrain avoidance warning system or a black box. It wasn't required to have either of those, but it does make it a little bit more challenging for investigators. They have recovered an iPad that may have belonged to the pilot and a cell phone at the scene. They are going to go through those. They also found maintenance records from the helicopter in the wreckage. Those are being analyzed. But the big question, why did the helicopter fall from the sky, remains a mystery.
Minutes from disaster. New cell phone video appears to show Kobe Bryant's helicopter circling near Burbank Airport before the crash. Tuesday, the NTSB used a helicopter to airlift the wreckage off the hillside. The coroner says all 9 victims have now been recovered and 4 have been positively identified, including Kobe Bryant.
This was a high-energy impact crash.
About 35 minutes after takeoff, with the weather deteriorating, pilot Ara Zubayan asked controllers to track him on radar, but he was flying too low. 4 minutes later, he radioed he was going to go above the layer of clouds. Flying in potentially blinding fog, he reached 2,300 feet. In its final 12 seconds of flight, the helicopter banked left and abruptly descended, falling at up to 5,000 feet per minute. Its last recorded speed, about 184 miles per hour.
Do you have a sense if the helicopter came down all in one piece, or is there evidence that it perhaps broke up as it was coming down?
Preliminary information is that the helicopter was in one piece when it impacted the terrain.
And they were only a few minutes flight away from their destination, the Camarillo Airport, here at the crash scene. One thing that came up at the press conference that's getting a lot of buzz was this idea that they were 25, 30 feet from clearing a ridge. The area where the crash happened is a series of ridges and ravines, and the rate at which they were coming down, that helicopter was going to crash, whether it cleared that ridge or not. Anthony?
All right, Chris, thanks.
Tremendously. And but we're best friends, too. That's a blessing. When we're raising our daughters, and one of the things that we teach them is you just got to try your best. And you just got to give it your all, give it everything you have.
As parents, you got to lead by example. If you want your kids to do whatever it is they want to accomplish in life, you have to show them. I have 4 girls, so my mission is to make sure women have opportunities.
Our daughters will grow up understanding that they can be strong, they can be independent, they can be fierce. I just love spending time with my family and just being a husband, being a father, being a goofball, just having a good time with my kids.
By the events Sunday morning in Calabasas. Lost in this unthinkable tragedy.
We move on now to the deadly and massive warehouse explosion in Houston. Home surveillance showing the moment the blast occurred. Rocking surrounding neighborhoods, just incredible there. At least 2 people killed, several injured, more than 180 homes damaged, rooftops smashed, windows blown out. And tonight, now the warning for families miles away from the blast site. ABC's Marcus Moore in Houston.
The powerful explosion caught on a doorbell camera, lighting up the sky. The shock wave knocking it to the ground.
You can still see smoke and flames billowing out of that building. In fact, it looked like it just fired up there for a second.
Tonight in Houston, at least 2 people are dead, and hundreds of families have nowhere to go after a massive and deadly explosion at a manufacturing plant. The blast just before 4:30 this morning.
This building looks like a bomb has gone off inside it.
What did you think? I mean,
I thought the world was ending. I mean, this was crazy.
The owner telling our station KTRK it was likely caused by leaking propylene, a highly flammable gas that is dangerous to breathe.
La casa.
Explosion in your house?
Yeah, push.
Everything fell off, the doors, even the windows broke. It was like an earthquake.
The 2 killed, believed to be workers at the plant. Debris scattered for half a mile. More than 180 homes damaged, many knocked from their foundations.
This is the kitchen. Blinds down, glass shattered everywhere. But look at this. These window frames, they are bent from the force, the sheer force of the explosion.
We're just really blessed to be alive, and all the sheetrock that came down in our house, it's a miracle that none of it landed on our heads.
Residents now shoring up their homes. The ATF assisting in the investigation.
It's amazing anyone survived this, to be quite honest. And we're very lucky that this happened early this morning, before this street was busy and before all the employees were at that business.
David, authorities here are asking residents if they find anything in or around their homes, even if it's a mile away, building debris or even body parts, that they don't touch it and call police instead. The Red Cross, meanwhile, has set up an emergency shelter for all of the families that have been displaced by this terrible blast. David?
All right, Marcus.
Now to Australia, where they're facing those massive fires, already among the worst in that country's history, with more than 12 million acres scorched. And officials are warning the next few days will be even worse. Maggie Rulli is there in New South Wales, Australia for us this morning with the latest. Good morning, Maggie.
Robin, the family who lives here tells me they have been battling back these flames for the past 2 weeks, getting as little as a couple hours of sleep every night. People here are exhausted, and unfortunately it looks like things are just going to get worse.
This morning, a mass evacuation underway as thousands flee their homes, escaping an apocalyptic sight in Australia. The massive bushfires now visible from space, engulfing the size of more than 50 New York cities.
But not like this.
What's different?
The blackness, the darkness, the intensity of it. It's like an apocalypse. It's like something that you've never experienced before.
The blazes, a near constant threat for months.
With these winds starting to pick up, you can see just how dangerous these hot spots are, how quickly they can spread. We've been here for minutes and already it is rapidly spreading down the hill. Oh no!
Some people deciding to stay behind to protect their homes. In this dramatic video, a woman using only a garden hose fights back flames. This man and his family were on vacation when the fire closed in on them.
We're actually fleeing for our lives.
A local hero rushing them to safety on his boat. The Australian Navy bringing in supplies and aid, rescuing families trapped off the coast. Firefighters battling the flames from the sky.
Water dropping aircraft overhead pretty much non-stop.
Trying to stay ahead of these fires as conditions are expected to get even worse this weekend.
Tomorrow's D-Day.
And with conditions worsening, the U.S. Embassy has warned all American tourists inside the fire zone to get out immediately. Guys?
All right, you've covered fires, and when you see someone with their garden hose out, your heart just goes out to them.
People forget the radiant heat alone can burn your skin. So the flame doesn't need to touch you directly, but if you get close enough, it can be devastating. Oh. Absolutely.
Kasih, ulur. Awas lampu. Tarik. Woi, bantu depan, tarik.
Breaking news. At least 12 people have been shot dead in Thailand. Police say a soldier went on a shooting spree in the city of Korat. Wayne Hay joins us now on the phone from the Thai capital, Bangkok. Wayne, just bring us up to speed. What more can you tell us?
Yes, this is still very much an ongoing and developing situation, as you rightly said, in the city of Korat, otherwise known as Nakhon Ratchasima. This is a city about 250 kilometres to the northeast of the capital, Bangkok. According to reports and what the police are now beginning to confirm as well, is a soldier within the last 2 hours or so began shooting on a military base in the city, near the city, and killed a commanding officer and at least 2 others on the military base, then stole a military vehicle and drove towards the centre of Nakhon Ratchasima, shooting at people as he went towards a shopping mall called Terminal 21. The shooting has continued inside the shopping mall. There is video circulating on social media, and you can clearly hear very loud gunshots, multiple gunshots coming from within the shopping mall itself. It is believed that he has hostages inside that building as well. He's also been streaming the shooting on social media, on Facebook, posting regular updates up until about 40 minutes ago. His Facebook page has now been taken down. One of his last posts suggested, well, he said in his post that he's tired now. He said, "I can't move my finger anymore." His photo has clearly been posted on many social media sites as well. So the police have the entire area under lockdown. They've been joined by the military as well. Some police commandos being flown also from the capital, Bangkok. So still very much a developing situation.
And Wayne, the images that we're seeing from the scene right now, it looks like we're looking at images that are coming from inside the mall. We've also seen some images from outside the mall. This looks like it's a very busy area, a lot of people there.
Yes, certainly. Nakhon Ratchasima is a busy city. It's very much known as the gateway to the northeast, again, pretty close to the capital, Bangkok. It is a bustling Thai city, and the shopping mall, as is the case in many areas of Thailand, would be the centre of the action on a Saturday evening at around 7 o'clock, so about an hour ago, when this was all beginning to filter through on social media and in the Thai media, would have been very busy in that area. As I say, the police and military very much have a cordon in place now, locking the area down. There has been a statement made by a police spokesperson advising people who are in the area to move right away, those who live in the area to stay indoors and listen to instructions from the security officers. So still very much an unfolding situation, as I say. And I mentioned that the social media posts that he has been posting, one of the things that he said, again, about an hour ago on Facebook was, "Should I surrender?" So it seems perhaps that the situation may come to an end soon, or at least, of course, that is the hope. But again, this situation is still changing as we speak.
Wayne, how unusual is it to have a mass shooting in Thailand?
Mass shootings are very rare here. You know, gun crime is relatively common. Access to guns is relatively easy. There are strict laws surrounding gun ownership in Thailand, but it is very easy with corruption being so rife here. With the black market being so strong, it is relatively easy to get your hands on weapons, on guns. This man is, again, we should point out, is believed to be a soldier, a serving soldier in the Thai army. He began his shooting spree on an army base, so clearly access to weapons there easier than it would be for a civilian member of the public. But generally, mass shootings in Thailand are very rare. They do not happen very often, but again, gun crime is common. We should also point out that the military in Thailand plays a major role in life here. The military is often involved in politics, It is involved in business in Thailand, and some would say that it is the most powerful organization in this country. And one of the posts that he has made on social media refers, again, we don't know the motives for the shooting. We don't know much about the soldier himself. But one of the things he did point out on social media was making a reference to corruption. Again, too early to say whether that is the main motivation for the shooting, but corruption is a major problem within the military. Many allegations of them being involved in illegal business, illegal trade. So they do play a very large part in Thai society.
Details which I'm sure will come out in the hours and days from now. For now, thank you for that. That's Wayne Hay. Just recapping there, at least 12 people have been shot dead in Thailand. The active shooter is apparently a soldier. He went on a shooting spree in the city of Korat, and it is believed that there are now hostages being held inside that mall, and we will bring you more as it comes to hand.
Already rattled residents in Puerto Rico jolted by another earthquake just a short time ago. It was a magnitude 5.9 quake that struck on the island's southern shore. It follows a series of aftershocks 4 days after that magnitude 6.4 hit in the same area. NBC's Nicole Acevedo is joining me now about this. Nicole, it's got to be pretty frightening for folks. What about damage? Do you have reports of extensive damage, or what do you know about it?
Yeah, so we have to remind ourselves that the damage that we're seeing in Puerto Rico right now, it's cumulative. People in Puerto Rico have been feeling tremblers since December 28th. The biggest one yet happened on Tuesday, which was the one that you mentioned, and it was the biggest earthquake the Puerto Rican people have seen in a century. So that caused many homes to collapse, hundreds of homes to collapse, schools, streets to just rupture, and the island has not stopped shaking. At least over 120 aftershocks have been reported. And just in the last 12 hours, when people were sleeping, they were reported that aftershocks were happening every single hour until the newest one, the 5.9 earthquake that happened this morning. So we've seen videos of people near an outdoor shelter that had to run away from a landslide. We've seen more streets being ruptured. We're seeing historical buildings crumbling. So there's new damage, but there's also cumulative damage because the island has not stopped moving since.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Nicole, as we've been talking, we've been showing power lines, which brings this to mind. Certainly after the hurricane, it took Puerto Rico's main power plant a good year or so to get back fully online, and now it may have to go offline for further repairs. I mean, what can you tell us about the power situation now? How many don't have power on the island or may have to go without it going forward?
So the earthquake on Tuesday triggered a blackout, an island-wide blackout. That was mostly restored. However, the southern part of the island is so affected that the power plant there that contributes about a quarter of the power that the island needs, that one it's gonna be shut down. So it's officials were saying that it would take a year to repair. So what they're doing is that they're essentially maxing out their other power plants in terms of capacity of producing energy. And officials are also asking for generators, emergency generators, to help basically make up for the loss.
Oof. Okay. Nicole Acevedo, thank you so much.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Tony DeCopa with Gail King and Anthony Mason, and we're going to begin with this. The FBI is investigating a controversial police shooting at a Chicago transit station that was captured on camera. And we want to warn you, this footage may be upsetting. The witness video shows the struggle between a man and two Chicago police officers on Friday. The man was shot twice. He is now in stable condition. Our national correspondent, Jerika Duncan, is following the latest developments in this fast-moving case. Only happened on Friday. Jerika, good morning. What do we know?
Good morning to you all. Well, we know right now this morning there are multiple investigations into why shots were fired. An expert we spoke to says the officer was not justified in pulling out their gun in the first place.
Stop! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop resisting!
More than a dozen times you hear Chicago police officers telling the man to stop after they say he allegedly moved between train cars, an offense that's punishable by a fine but is not a felony. The female officer appears to use a taser on the man. Then you hear the male officer say, "Shoot him." Shoot him. The video shows the man trying to go up the escalator, and that's when you hear a second shot. His attorney says the 33-year-old man was shot in the chest and buttocks. Charges against him were dropped, but investigators say they're considering possible criminal charges against the officers.
We both are extremely concerned and have significant questions about the incident.
CBS News security and law enforcement analyst Paul Violas reviewed the nearly 5 minutes of cell phone video. He says this shooting never should have happened.
Based on police procedure, based on use of force, based on the way police are trained, there did not appear to be imminent fear of their lives or imminent risk to the public, which would have justified deadly physical force.
Both officers are on paid administrative duty during the investigation. The Chicago Police Department issued a statement saying it is not rushing to judgment, but it is cooperating with the independent investigations. The Fraternal Order of Police say the city should not be commenting until all the facts are gathered. But Mayor Lori Lightfoot even said extremely disturbing looking at the video. Officers said there could be more video, so still a lot of questions.
Yeah. As you reported, the charges have been dropped.
Yeah.
Man.
And now they're saying possible charges against the officer.
Well, the police official in your piece said there are significant questions. I don't understand being shot in the back as you're leaving.
Yes.
Considering what he was accused of doing.
Yeah. Right.
Running in between
trains.
Subway cars.
Authorities in the Philippines are warning that a volcano near the capital could be on the verge of a dangerous eruption. While the Taal volcano, about 60 kilometers south of Manila, began spewing ash and lava on Sunday. While Taal sits in a picturesque lake and is one of the most active volcanoes in a region where earthquakes and eruptions are a daily part of life. And Manila's international airport was temporarily closed and tens of thousands of people have fled while others are refusing to leave their homes and farms.
Volcanic lightning shoots up into huge ash clouds charged with static electricity. It's just the opening act of what could be one of nature's most dramatic shows. The Taal volcano last erupted more than 40 years ago. Now as steam gushes above and earthquakes rumble below, experts say another massive eruption could be just hours away.
We were afraid and in panic. We were thinking of how we could save our lives.
Tens of thousands of people living in nearby towns have been evacuated. Rain mixed with volcanic ash has coated the roads in thick mud, making driving treacherous.
It's difficult to get food because we can't use the vehicle since it's muddy. And we can't even clean it since there's no water.
Ash is affecting the capital Manila, 60 kilometres north. Face masks are in short supply. At the airport, hundreds of flights have been cancelled. While some tourists are trying to leave, others are getting up close to the volcano.
It's that's a once-in-a-life, experience for us because we have not this phenomena in our country. So for me, it's very, very, very interesting.
The danger level has now reached level 4, just one notch away from a hazardous eruption, which could affect hundreds of thousands of people living in the volcano's danger zone.
Exactly, with the experts warning now that the volcano eruption could get a lot worse. Let's get you an update of how things are right now. DW correspondent Ana Santos is in the capital, Manila, not very far from the volcanic site where all this rest of activity is taking place. Ana, you visited the site. Can you describe what you saw?
We were up at the site earlier today, about 6 miles away from Taal volcano, and all throughout the day we saw the volcano spewing out ash clouds. These ash clouds were initially like white, and then they turned to gray, and at some point they were also black. On the roads going up to Taal volcano, there was the roads were covered with sludge. This is because of the volcanic ash that mixed with rain. So the roads were very slushy and slippery, and it was very difficult to move from one place to another because the roads were dangerous. Also, the ashfall covered entire swaths of plantations and mostly pineapples in this part of the country. And also, the weight of the volcanic volcanic ash, it made the leaves on trees droop. Entire towns were covered in gray. They looked like a black and white photo. Now, against all of this, some people, or most people, didn't really look like they were in a state of alarm. A lot of them were going about their daily business. Like, for example, Tagaytay, which is a very popular tourist site, was still attracting a lot of visitors who were taking selfies in front of the volcano and really mesmerized by the terrifying beauty of its continued eruption. Mm-hmm. You also saw farmers washing away volcanic ash from their livestock and just trying to go about their daily life, and people were wondering, where's the panic or where's the alarm? Now, a lot has been said about the resiliency of Filipinos in terms of coping with natural disasters, but I think that can be drilled down deeper to two factors, both starting with letter F. One is frequency. We are one of the most disaster-prone areas in the world, so we experience natural disasters of all types on a fairly frequent basis. So that kind of over time, you get used to it. And on the other hand, there's also a mix of fatalism, which is very much because of our predominantly Catholic country. So you kind of believe that, you know, these things happen for a reason, and that you can't do anything about it. So you just try to find ways to deal with it the best that you can.
And I just want to get in there very quickly. What will happen to the people? Yes, there is a sense of, you know, we've experienced that before because obviously the Philippines, very disaster-prone, earthquake, typhoons, volcanic eruptions, but still thousands of people have been moved out of harm's way. What will happen to them? Because, you know, they have had to leave their livelihoods behind. Who's taking care of them?
So about 8,000 or 10,000 people have been moved to evacuation centers or to some safer areas. Now, earlier today, the government's latest update was that they're actually preparing for two very extreme scenarios. One is where an eruption can take place over the next couple of days, or a prolonged eruption, which can happen for a series of months. Now, we saw another volcano in another part of the Philippines last year do this. It just erupted continuously over a period of months. And this is something the government will have to prepare for. How are you going to keep these people who are in harm's way safe over a prolonged and indefinite period of time? And how do you do that with a minimal disruption to their lives and their livelihoods?
Other news, multiple shooters, several motorcycle clubs, and an investigation with more questions than answers tonight.
Awful situation. You could see folks running for their lives after 18 people were shot this weekend. It happened on Cleveland's east side. News 5's Tracy Carlis live at the 4th District headquarters. Tonight, and Tracy, you're learning new details about this shooting.
Frank, Danita, for the first time tonight, we hear those frantic calls for help.
3804 East 93rd Street.
East 93rd Street?
I got multiple gunshot victims down.
Chaos.
3804, they shooting inside here.
And calls for help. 31 911 calls flooded dispatchers Saturday night after a shooting at a building near East 93rd Street and Way Avenue in the Union Miles Park neighborhood. By the light of day, the bullet holes were easy to see. 17 people shot, 1 man dead. Police say several organized motorcycle groups were involved. The party at this warehouse, hosted by the Omens Motorcycle Club. Members of the Zulus and Wheels of Soul were there too. The shooting reportedly started after some people were asked to leave. Only News 5's cameras captured Cleveland police detectives scouring the neighborhood looking for anything that might lead them to those who fired into this building and killed 48-year-old Andre Lee Dixon.
Without even leaving from my home, my heart just was reaching out to the people that was hurt, the families that is hurt, you know, the damage that has been done.
William Young is a deacon at this church down the street. He is hoping church leaders, community leaders, and community members can come together in hopes of trying to stop the violence before it gets worse.
Anyone that has a concern about what took place here, think about the families that the damage was done to the families, you know, and come on out. Have a voice in this community here. It could start right here.
In the meantime, police too are hoping to find those who shot and killed Dixon before more violence between the clubs breaks out. And tonight at 7 o'clock, there will be a vigil at that location, East 93rd and Way. And in anticipation of a large crowd, Cleveland police plan to shut down some.
We're going to turn now to another big story, that shooting at a Molson Coors brewery facility in Wisconsin. One of the worst mass shootings in the state's history. Police say an employee went on a rampage, killing at least 5 co-workers before taking his own life. Alex Perez is in Milwaukee this morning. Alex, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Tom. For the more than 1,000 people who work here, yesterday started out pretty normally until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when suddenly everyone's worst nightmare became a reality. This morning, a tragedy at a Milwaukee landmark.
Never seen anything like this.
Police say an employee opened fire at the Old Miller Brewing headquarters, now the Molson Coors company, killing 5 co-workers before turning the gun on himself.
We got 1 man down.
Investigators say the former employee returned to the office armed, opening fire on staff members. Employees were evacuated along with neighboring schools as police searched more than 20 buildings on the company's campus.
I'm just glad I was able to get here in time, get them out of here, and just get them home.
All of us were just kind of in shock because we didn't know what was going on.
This worker says he walked away from the gunman to talk to someone else just seconds before the shooter pulled out the gun.
If I wouldn't have gone to talk to this guy who was relieving me, I'd be one of them guys. I know that for a fact, because I would have walked right into what was going on.
More than 1,000 people were working at the sprawling beer plant Wednesday afternoon when the shooting occurred.
This Miller Brewing site has been part of the Miller family and part of the city of Milwaukee for 165 years. And this is the saddest day that we have had.
And authorities at this point have not released any other details on the 51-year-old gunman or his employment history. This community now coming together to mourn those that were killed. Robin?
The man accused of murdering 3 people and trying to murder a 4th in a Down East shooting spree earlier this week is expected to make his first court appearance today.
Yeah, News Center Main's Chloe Tebow is live this morning for us in Calais and has some details. Good morning, Chloe.
Hi, Lee and Sharon. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, Thomas Bonifonte is expected to appear at Calais District Court at some point this morning or early afternoon. He's the man accused of shooting and killing 3 people and then shooting and injuring another person after police say he shot in 4 different locations in Jonesboro and Machias on Monday morning. And after an event like this in a really small town, the community is heartbroken and people have a lot of questions.
Must have just snapped. I mean, we're still trying to figure it all out.
Figure out how this quiet part of eastern Maine turned into a number of crime scenes Monday morning.
You know, it was something that was out of the blue. And surprisingly shocking.
Shocking, especially when
I knew the victims and I knew the shooter.
The alleged shooter, Thomas Bonifonte, who police say shot at people in 4 different locations Monday morning, killing Sean Curry, Samuel Powers, Jennifer Bryant Flynn, and injuring another adult female. Those who knew them, devastated.
Jennifer was a beautiful person, a beautiful soul that would stand by her friends, do anything for them. She would take from herself to give to them.
Now authorities are working to put together the pieces.
Investigatively, we have to try to establish, why this happened and exactly what caused it. And then we'll have to try to figure out time frames and things like that.
A busy agenda for a community used to trusting its neighbors, never expecting the worst.
It can happen anywhere down nowadays. But it was, we're getting through it. We're processing it.
Now, one update we have learned today, the Portland Press-Herald is reporting that 4th woman injured is in critical condition at Maine Medical Center, and we will be here all day at the courthouse covering this hearing on air and online. In Calais, Chloe Tebow, News Center Maine, Sharon and Lee.
The grim search for survivors overseas after a deadly and powerful earthquake in eastern Turkey. The magnitude 6.7 quake destroying buildings, sending residents running into the streets. And in the shadow of that rising death toll, moments of miracle rescues. ABC's Julia McFarland reports.
Tonight, teams in eastern Turkey racing to rescue survivors still buried in the rubble. This young girl injured and trapped, a worker cradling her in his arms as she lets out a cry, a team miraculously pulling her out of the wreckage. And after a grueling 17 hours trapped in debris, an elderly woman finally pulled to safety in front of an anxious crowd. She had managed to contact rescue workers on her cell phone, telling them where she was trapped. The death toll climbing tonight to at least 29, with more than 1,000 injured after the deadly 6.7 magnitude quake struck just before 9 p.m. last night. The moment caught on camera during the evening news. The damage leaving thousands homeless. This man says he could not go home to his village and that families had spent the night gathered around a fire, covered in blankets. Turkey frequently suffers quakes because it sits on a fault line, but this one was especially powerful. Hundreds of aftershocks were felt, some as far as Iran and Syria. Tonight, the search for survivors continues. Tom?
Julia McFarland with those incredible images of those rescues. Julia, thank you.
I want to check on these oil prices because this plunge is remarkable, folks. It was on reports that Saudi Arabia slashing prices and increasing supply. This after talks with Russia collapsed. Crude prices down more than 22% earlier today, the biggest loss since the launch of the Gulf War back in 1991. With me now, founder and editor of the Shork Report, Stephen Shork. Stephen, thanks for joining us.
Sure, great to be here, Charles.
Well, it's great to have you. You are undoubtedly one of the best when it comes to this, particularly connecting the dots, because that's what I'm having a hard time with, connecting the dots. Oil goes down precipitously and everything else collapses too. Why?
Well, this all is the catalyst happens to be that Saudi Arabia did initiate a price war with the Russians over the weekend by cutting their official selling price. But let's keep in mind, this price action has very little to do with Saudi Arabia per se. This is payback from Russia. Charles, remember 2 weeks ago, the Trump administration slapped the trading arm of Russia's largest oil company, Rosneft, for its dealings with Venezuela. The fallout from those sanctions are going to mean that Russia, or Rosneft, is going to lose market share for its crude oil exports to Asia, European, and of course, U.S. buyers. At the same time, the United States has been a net exporter of oil, crude oil, and product since October, 150,000 barrels a day. In last week's EIA report, U.S. crude oil production hit an all-time high of 13.1 million barrels a day. Those new exports of the U.S. burgeoning market are going to take market share away from Rosneft. So Russia's decision not to back an oil production cut with Saudi Arabia had less to do with Saudi Arabia and more to do as a response to these sanctions to its largest oil trading company. So this is an absolute price war.
But, Stephen, in rationale, you got to go back to the Second Punic War to find a similar rationale. I mean, what the heck is going on here? Are there any winners?
No, there is not. I mean, there might be that sugar high, the consumer paying extremely low price for energy, for their energy. But this is a Potemkin village. This is not a good thing. Low oil prices, low industrial commodity prices do not drive economic growth, Charles. Economic growth drives commodity prices. And what we did see coming into this was an already decrease in energy demand because the industrial side of the U.S. economy, the industrial side of the European economy, the industrial side of the Asian economy have been in recession now for at least the last 3 to 6 months. So we've already seen that knock on to falling energy demand. Now you add in the coronavirus and you run the risk of that demand decay now transpiring into the consumer level. So this is not a good thing for anyone involved in these markets.
But is this also a wake-up call or some sort of epiphany on supply? I mean, you just started this by saying we had a record amount of production. You have all these nations around the world, some that were offline coming online. Aren't there limits to this, to the amount of supply, no matter how great an economy is?
There are the limits to supply, but we're in a major pivot in the world oil markets because, of course, we have substitutes in the market. This isn't all an oil-driven market for transportation needs.
You see the teams heading back to the locker room. It happened without warning in Oklahoma City.
The game tonight has been postponed. You are all safe. And take your time in leaving the arena tonight.
In a packed arena, the game between the Thunder and the Utah Jazz abruptly canceled after a Utah player who the league says was not in the stadium tested positive for the coronavirus. Then came word from the NBA, all games for all teams suspended until further notice. The league adding in a statement, the NBA will use this hiatus to determine next steps for moving forward in regard to the coronavirus pandemic. As shocked fans flooded out of the stadium, multiple news outlets reported All-Star Rudy Gobert is the player who has the virus. On Monday, Gobert, holding this press conference, asked about COVID-19, then seemingly joking, proceeding to touch every microphone on the table as he walked away. LeBron James tweeting, "Man, we canceling sporting events, school, office work, etc., etc. What we really need to cancel is 2020. Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban courtside for his own team's game when he learned the news.
The whole idea that it's come this close and potentially a couple players have it, just stunning isn't the right word. I mean, it's just crazy.
Just hours earlier, the NCAA announcing its annual March Madness tournament will be played without fans this year. With opening day 2 weeks away, sources tell NBC News Major League Baseball is now considering its options. And now, so is the NHL. The entertainment world also taking steps to reduce risk. Many talk shows, including Ellen.
No touch, no even shaking my hand.
And The Tonight Show, suspending taping in front of live audiences. New York City now canceling their famed St. Patrick's Day parade, the first time in more than 250 years. The massive Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, which has already hosted more than 500,000 visitors, called off on Wednesday after a local man with no recent travel history tested positive.
Thank you for coming out tonight.
This morning, the future of American sports and entertainment in limbo as the coronavirus reshapes the way we live and play.
And Miguel, there in California overnight, the governor also announced that he wants to restrict crowd sizes, as I understand it. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Craig, the governor says he doesn't want gatherings over 250 people in California. Here in Los Angeles, gatherings like that happen every day all across this city.
In a matter of days, Dr. Li Wenliang went from treating patients to becoming one. The 34-year-old ophthalmologist diagnosed Saturday with the Wuhan coronavirus, dying less than a week later in the same hospital in which he worked. But if action had been taken when he and others started sounding alarms, the severity of the outbreak might have been understood sooner. Struggling to communicate, Lee spoke with CNN briefly by phone on January 31st. You could hear the hospital machines pulsing in the background. It was back in late December when Lee first warned friends on WeChat about a SARS-like disease going around. Lee sent a group message saying that a test result from a patient quarantined at the hospital where he worked showed a patient had a coronavirus. But hours after hitting send, Wuhan city health officials tracked Lee down, questioning where he got the information. Within days, they closed the suspected source of the virus, this seafood market, and they announced the outbreak. But instead of being praised, Lee got a call from Wuhan City Police. With Lee coughing too much and breathing too poorly to speak by phone, we asked Lee by text, "How did you feel when this happened?" "I felt a little afraid I would be detained, afraid my family would worry," Lee responded. He agreed to sign this document, admitting to spreading rumors online and severely disrupting social order. It reads, "We want you to cooperate with the police and listen to our reminder and stop the illegal act. Can you do that?" Lee answered, "Yes, I can." In the weeks that followed, the Wuhan Municipal Health Commission maintained that there was no obvious evidence for human-to-human transmission, no infection of healthcare workers, and that the outbreak was, in their words, preventable and controllable. And with that, the people of Wuhan continued about their normal lives. Then came a sudden jump in infections. China's central government took over, scrambling to contain a spreading virus with a rising death toll. Chinese state media first reported that Lee was one of several whistleblowers silenced by police. Calls for Lee and the others to be vindicated grew online. China's Supreme Court even weighed in, adding, quote, "It might have been a fortunate thing if the public had listened to this rumor at the time." But for many, including Lee and his parents, it was too late. They all contracted the coronavirus. Lee's condition declined rapidly. But before his death Friday, he witnessed the support of thousands online who considered him a hero. Late Thursday night, Chinese state media first reported Lee's death.
The responses online reflected a profound grief and a deep anger. The two topics trending on Chinese social media were Wuhan government owes Dr. Li Wenliang an apology and we want freedom of speech. Both had tens of thousands of views before being censored. Soon after, state media changed its reporting, citing Wuhan Central Hospital, which reported Li was still alive but in critical condition. And a few hours later, in the middle of the night, hospital authorities officially announced Lee's death. He was 34. David Culver, CNN, Beijing.
For more now, journalist Yuanying Chen joins me now from Hong Kong. She's also an honorary professor at the University of Hong Kong. So thank you for being with us. You know, censorship in China can be fairly nuanced and sophisticated. The government knows there's this need sometimes for people to vent, to express their frustration, to blow off steam. Is that at play here, especially since this story of Dr. Lee's death was first reported by the Global Times, which is considered very pro-Beijing?
No, I don't think the government can censor all the outpour of outrage on the internet. It was like a state funeral online last night. People were making comments and expressing their grief. Now, note that the internet is huge in China. You have like almost 900 million people online, and almost 100% on mobile, and they're also on WeChat, a very robust social media tool. And because the outrage and it is so outpouring.
So just let me jump in there.
The government has to listen, I think. I hope.
So just to jump in there, so what you're saying is that everything we hear about China's censorship and the government control over what people say and do online, you're saying they can't control this particular instance?
Well, not just this one. The yes, the control is very intense, extensive, and especially under Xi Jinping since he came to power. But look, the internet and technology is a huge disruptive force, and when people are looking for outlets to express themselves. And even with the control, even before the death last night, you have reporters, you have citizen journalists, just everyday people trying to tell the truth, tell what's happening online. So there's censorship, but there is a big pushback from the public.
I'm just curious, if you have we have this situation too with a lot of angry people expressing frustration about the death of this doctor. You also have an unprecedented lockdown of almost 60 million people heading into its third week. You have so many people gathered in the one place for an incredibly long time. At best, they're skeptical of the information they're getting from government officials. That would seem to be more than enough ingredients for some kind of, unrest, if you like.
Well, about the lockdown, I think people also understand the need to stop the transmission of the virus. And so it's a very complicated picture. People are not entirely opposed to it. Actually, people supported it and want government to do better, like deliveries of services, giving medical care. There's a lot of issues. So already there's been a lot of complaints and grievances aired online, even before last night. And so it's like a back and forth struggle between the facts trying to get out and government attempt to crush them. But also, government is not just a singular and controlling force. You have the central government, you have local government, and but the internet is a great liberating force.
Yuanying Chen, we are out of time, so we shall leave it there. But thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.